Hi everybody, good morning science friends. It's exciting to see everybody today. So today we're going to do an activity called Rising Sea, where we're going to talk about how water levels interact with the land and how changing water levels are something that we can think about and keep track of. So for the activity today, you're going to need, I'm just going to change this so you can see it. You're going to need a clear container or a container with a clear lid. You can use this is like a Tupperware container. If you want, you can use a bowl with a glass plate over it. You can use lots of different things. If you don't have anything like that, you can also use saran wrap and put it over the top and tape it down. But it's a little bit easier if you have a container with a lid. Then you're going to need either some rocks, or you can use, if you don't have any rocks, you can just grab some cups and little things from your kitchen that fit in your container. So like this one is a little too tall. But if you have some smaller bowls and things that fit in your container, that works great. If you're using bowls, I would recommend using a piece of aluminum foil and some tape. And then you're going to need some water. You're going to need some markers. Don't use permanent markers, just use like regular markers. And if you want, you can use some food coloring. Okay. Today we're going to learn about how water levels change over time. So we're going to make a little earth in our clear container. Okay. So while you are going to grab some of those supplies, I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth so she can talk a little bit about Zoom and how Zoom works.
All right.
I'm going to ask a couple questions. So how many people have rocks? Does everybody have rocks? Yeah? Are there some people? Oh, awesome. Hold up your rock if you have a rock. Woo! Okay. Now, if you have cups or things like that instead, we're going to do that second. But first, I'm going to show you what you can do if you have rocks. Okay, so I'm just going to change my computer. Try to do it slowly so nobody gets dizzy. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a little mountain, a little island in my container. So I'm just going to take my rocks and I'm going to arrange them in my container so that, you know, it looks pretty and I have something cool that you can see. So let's just show you. So right now I have a little island. I'm just going to hang on to it in my container. And you can imagine what it would be like if you lived over here. You could imagine what you want to call your island. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a topographic map. A topographic map is a special map that people use when they do science. And it tells you about how the water interacts with the land. So what we're going to do to make our map is first you're going to take your clear container and you're going to put it on top of your, you're going to take your lid and put it on top of your container. Then what you're going to do is you're going to draw with your marker around the edge of your island that you made. So I'm just going to move this a little bit closer so you can see what I'm doing. But all I'm going to do is I am going to draw around the edge of my island. And I tested this with these markers and it'll wash off with soap and water. So parents and grown-ups that are watching, don't worry, we did actually think about this. Okay, so now I'm going to show you what I drew. So what I drew is the outline of my water. Now, before we move on, Elizabeth, can you see if there's anybody who doesn't have rocks? Does everybody have rocks? Yes? Okay.
Looks like everybody has an awesome setup in their container. I'm excited to see how these islands work.
All right, great. We don't need to use our cups and our aluminum foil then. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is, you don't have to do this part is optional, but I'm gonna put some food coloring in my water so I can see better what I'm doing and you'll be able to see better what I'm doing. You can skip this step if you want because it is optional and it is a little bit messier when you have food coloring. If you have like bath tablets instead, those are a little bit easier to clean up, but I don't have any of those in my house. I'm just gonna stir my water. Ooh, I used a lot of food coloring. My water is really, really blue. Does anybody else use a lot of food coloring? Does anybody make water that's not blue? Yeah? Oh, you used a marker. Yeah, you can put a marker in your water. You can just like put the tip of the marker in your water and you can turn your water blue. That's a really good idea. You could use watercolor paint if you had that in your house. I don't have that in my house right now. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna add some water to our island because islands have water around them, right? So now I'm just gonna add a little bit of water to my island, okay? So here we go. I'm just gonna add a little bit of water. Okay. So now what you can do is you can admire what your island looks like once it has a little ocean around it. And then what you can do is you can put your lid back on your container. You want to put it on the same direction as you had it before. And you can use the same color marker. You can use a different color marker. And you're going to trace around the edge of where your rocks meet the land. So where your island meets where the ocean meets the land, where the edge of your island is. Okay, so I'm just going to stand up because that makes it a little bit easier to do. And draw another line around the edge of where my island is. Okay. So now you can see what the edge of your island looks like once you have water. That blue didn't show up very well. We won't use that blue again. Okay. Now, what would happen if we had more water? What would happen if the water got higher? So let's add more water to our island. Oops, I got my island wet. Okay, I just added a lot of water to my island. See? You can sort of see what that looks like. Okay, now we can add another line to our map. So we can make another line that shows where the land meets the ocean. So where the edge of our rocks are touching the water, we can make another line. I'm going to use this green pen again because a green pen showed up really well. Okay. So if you stand over the edge, you can sort of see where your island meets your ocean. Okay. And then you can look at your line and see what you're making. So you are making a map that shows how the water levels are changing and how the changing water levels interact with the land and how it makes the land a different shape. Okay. So does anybody know some reasons that does anybody know anything about how the water goes up and down? Does anybody know about some things that make the water levels change? Anybody have any ideas? Are there things with the, yeah, that's right, the tides. So the moon influences the water level. So the water level goes up, then it goes down, and it does that every day. And that's a really cool thing that happens. So you can make a map of what it looks like when the water level is high and when the water level is low. So
we've got some more awesome ideas coming in. So Forrest says rain is something that's going to make water level go up and down. Brendan said waves. Oliver talked about the seasons. So we've got lots of cool ideas.
That is so great. You're right. All of these are things that make the water levels change. Now, if you were going to build a house on your island, where would you want to build it? Would you want to build it somewhere? Oops, sorry. I'm just trying to make it. Let's put a house on our island. So I'm going to use a marker right now to draw a little house on my island. Where would you want your house to be? Maybe you want your house to be up here where it's real high? Do you want your house to be down here in the water? Definitely want to think about that when you're building, right? That's right. And rocks move the water. That's right. So if we were going to add something else to the water, it would get higher too, right? So if we imagine that we live somewhere like in Canada where it's really cold, or if we lived in Greenland where it's really cold, we might have ice on our, we might have a bunch of ice, right? So sometimes when you look at mountains, there's a bunch of snow up there, or there's a bunch of ice up there. Now, what would happen if the ice melted and it went in the water? That's right. The water has to move around the land, and the water level gets a little bit higher when we do that because it's high. So if we had a whole bunch of ice on our mountain, and then what would happen if it fell over? Does anybody have any predictions about what would happen if the ice fell in the water? I'm looking at the chat. Splash, it's gonna splash, right? Ready? 1, 2, 3. It did splash a little bit. I am gonna make another map that shows what happens when the ice went in the water. We can see what it looks like when the ice is in the water. Okay.
Forrest also had a prediction that that ice is going to melt.
That's right, the ice is gonna melt. And what's gonna happen when the ice melts, Forrest? That's a really good prediction. Are there things that's gonna happen to the way that the water touches the rocks when the ice melts? There will be more water, that's right. And what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen to our little house down here if we get more water? Is our little house gonna be swimming? So here, we'll get some little toys. They're a little bit easier to see. Yeah, that's right. The water is going to be higher, and then our little dog and our little cat are going to be swimming in the water, and they will not be very happy, will they? Okay. So one of the things that scientists do is they keep track of where all of the water is and where all of the land is. Should we take our doggy out of the water and our cat? Do you think that they're sad? Should we take them out? I'm gonna take them out. I'm gonna just dry them off a little bit so that they can be happy again. Okay, there we go. Good job. Okay, so one of the things that scientists do is they keep track of what shape the land is and how the ocean moves around and if the water changes. So sometimes with the tide, the water goes up, then it goes down. If you have a lot of rain, if you get like a big flood, you can have the water go up and then it goes down. But what happens if the ice ends up in the water? There's nowhere for it to go, and the water goes up and it stays up. So that's something that we need to keep track of. And one of the things that makes the ice go in the water is if it gets really, really warm, or it gets warmer than it's supposed to, then the ice starts to melt and it goes, woo, and it lands in the ocean, right? And because all of the water and the earth is connected, if you have a little low island way over here and the ice falls in from Canada, it still affects this water over here, which is very interesting. So scientists use satellites to look at the land and to take pictures of it so they can see how it changes over time. Elizabeth has some links that she's going to share with you that show pictures that NASA has taken of how satellites have taken pictures of the land, and you can see what the earth looks like at different points in time. You can see what the earth looks like after floods. You can see what the earth looks like after storms. You can see what it looks like after volcanoes, and you can see how the world is changing over time. You can see if there's a really dry area where there's a drought, and there's a big lake, and the lake gets smaller and smaller and smaller because it's so dry. That's something that happens. You can take pictures of it and you can look at it over time. Because if you are your little doggy and you're just sitting in the water, you can only see so much. But if you have a satellite, the satellites go around the earth and they can take pictures, and they can do it more than one time a day. They can do it a few times a year. They can come back a few years later and see what looks different and how things change. Okay. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Does anybody else have anything that they want to share? I love all of these islands that you made. If you want to, you can take pictures of them and you can post them on our Facebook page so we can see the different islands that you made. If you have any little critters that you want to put in your islands, you can take their picture too. So you can see what it looks like if you're a little doggy sitting in the island in the water. If you want to try putting ice cubes on your land and letting them melt, you can see what happens. You can make observations. And you can make some more observations and predictions where you can put the ice in there and you can come back later in the day and see what happens when it melts. And you can make more lines on your map. So you can look at your map over time and see what makes changes to your map. And when you're all done, you can just take some of your water and soap and you can clean up your map and start over and make a new island. Okay. So I'm going to let Elizabeth talk about our activity for tomorrow. Thank you so much for being science friends with us today and for learning about how the water changes over time and how the rising seas interact with the land. So I'm just going to turn it over to Elizabeth so she can tell you about what we're doing tomorrow.
All right, awesome. So this week is Earth Week. It's actually the 50th anniversary of Earth Day on Wednesday. So for this whole week, we're doing lots of activities all about the Earth and how we as humans interact with the Earth. So we've got another activity tomorrow that's about how you interact with your community. So that one doesn't require very many materials at all. You just need some markers or pencils and some paper. So we look forward to seeing you all at 10:30 tomorrow for more Earth Week activities.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming.